After a long year and many mock drafts, my final predictive mock for the 2025 NFL Draft is officially here. I will be live tonight on this channel, youtube.com/Bengal. Please tune in 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We're covering the entire NFL Draft tonight, or at least the first round, and tomorrow night as well with rounds 2 and 3, and then Day 3 will be probably at least on twitch.tv/Bengal, link down in the description. Might multi-stream tonight, but that is a conversation for a different time. This is exactly what I think will happen with trades. I don't love every single selection, but it feels like with this draft, there's a lot of uncertainty because it's kind of more of a starters, not stars type of draft, at least from a prospect perspective. So it feels like teams, in my opinion, are going to be less willing to move up and down the board here in the first round, but we might see a little bit more movement in rounds 2 and 3 for specific players. But overall, as I've said, the difference between, 15 and 60 is not that different in terms of the talent you're going to find, which is a little bit unusual, obviously, but we're going to kick things off with the Tennessee Titans. I'll also be mentioning things I've heard and some rumors that have been put out there regarding some teams, because I am going away from some of that. If you looked at Daniel Jeremiah's final mock draft, you didn't see a lot of guys with any injury or character concerns appear in the first round at all. Guys with the injury stuff like Josh Simmons, Will Johnson, they were not included in the first round. Benjamin Morrison, obviously. And then you had guys with some character stuff, either personality or otherwise, not appear in the first round. There was no Mike Green. There was no Luther Burden. There was no James Pierce Jr. But I'll be mentioning these things as we go along. Cam Ward will be the first overall pick in the draft. The top really does seem like chalk. I mean, it does seem very obvious that it's going to go Cam Ward, Travis Hunter to Cleveland, Abdul Carter to the Giants. It seems like that's just going to be the true, easy first 3. Now, if there's a trade, things could change. Apparently, the Bears are calling up to different teams. Apparently, the Jags and Patriots want Travis Hunter probably. Seems like they're probably not going to be able to do that. So the Browns stick and pick, the Giants stick and pick. But teams want Ashton Jeanty. I think he's going to end up being a top 5 pick. The only question is, does he go to a team currently picking in the top 5? We'll have to see, because there are reports that if Jeanty makes it to 5, the Jags are taking Ashton Jeanty. There are also reports that if Jeanty makes it to 5, teams could move up to 5 for Jeanty. So it's smokescreen season. You never really know what to believe. And I'm going to have him still on the board as I go Will Campbell at 4. Again, it's the chalky type pick, but it seems like this is the direction the Patriots are going to be going. Campbell is a really, really solid player overall. There's a thought that obviously he's not going to be able to stick at left tackle, but there is a world where he can make it work because he's really athletic and his movement skills obviously are quite good. So he might be able to make the whole, obviously, the short arms thing work. We've talked about it a lot. At number 5, though, I am having the Jacksonville Jaguars move out. I'm going to have the Chicago Bears from 10 trade up to 5. They have ammunition in order to do it with 2 second-round picks and then not another pick again until 72. But I think the Bears would potentially part with one of these. We'll say 39 in this case. So it'd be something in the neighborhood, and this is a lot of speculation, right? But it's more about the team moving up and not what the exact compensation would be. But the Bears would trade in this scenario 10, 39, maybe even a 3 next year, and get a pick back from the Jaguars, maybe like 126 or something. And the Chicago Bears are officially on the clock. New head coach Ben Johnson coming over from Detroit. He knows what a great group of running backs can do, and he needs his bell cow running back. How about a running back that can catch out of the backfield, even though he didn't have to show it very much in 2024, but someone that can really, really run. He's impossible to get to the ground. The guy bounces off of every tackle. He's got quite enough speed. The Chicago Bears make their move. It is the first trade of this mock draft. Chicago jumps all the way up to 5 to snag one of the 3 true blue chip players in this class, in my opinion. I think it goes Hunter, Carter, Jeanty in that top 3, and then there's a drop-off. Genty is very much worth taking at 5, in my opinion, especially in this class. The Bears make their move. At number 6, the rumors are that this is Kelvin Banks. Now, given the way the board has fallen, I think that is certainly in play, I guess. But I think Mason Graham, it's tough not to go that direction. I, however, am going to go Armand Membou. And the reason I do that is, even as a Texas Longhorns fan, I'm also, I would say, with this stuff, I'm first and foremost a draft analyst. And, maybe not to the level of some of these, top guys. But I've been doing it for, quite a long time now. And you continue to get better every single year, you'd hope, in terms of prospect evaluation. And to me, I think Membou is a little bit above where I view Kelvin Banks. I just think his movement skills are a little bit better. He's a better athlete. And I also think he's not beat as often. And that's not to say that Kelvin Banks Jr. is beat routinely. There were times at Texas where, like, obviously in the Georgia game, those guys, Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, were getting after him, but also the quarterback not stepping up at the pocket. I just think Membou is just a little bit better than Kelvin Banks in a number of different ways, at least as a prospect. And I just view him a little bit highly, more, as a closer to a finished product than I do with Kelvin Banks right now. And I think for that reason, Membou ends up going higher. So I think this is basically 3 players. I think in almost any scenario, it's Armand Membou, Kelvin Banks Jr. at this point, or Mason Graham. Is there a chance the Raiders go in a different direction? Maybe it's Teteroa McMillan. Maybe it's a shock with Jahdae Barron or something like that. But I'm going to go Armand Membou. I think, to me, it feels like the most likely of the main 3, I would say, that I feel like it could be. And the Jets are going to have a very, very similar type conversation, because I think there's a really good chance that Membou does get to this pick. And then I think it's a 1 of 3 again, with Armand Membou if he's available, with Mason Graham, and with Tyler Warren. Maybe an outside shot of Jahdae Barron. Everybody talks about, okay, Aaron Glenn coming in from Detroit. He's a defensive guy, defensive coordinator, now jumping up to head coach. He's going to grab a defensive player. It's going to be Mason Graham or Jahdae Barron or maybe even Jalen Walker, right? But to me, I feel like the best player available, especially for a team lacking weapons on offense, and in a class where Tyler Warren, to me, is probably a top 5 talent, I think they're going to go Tyler Warren here at 7. It could absolutely be an offensive lineman like Membou if he gets there, or Mason Graham, and then again, maybe outside shot Jahdae Barron, Jalen Walker. But to me, it comes down to a 1 of 3. If Membou's there, it would be him, Warren, or Graham. And I'm going to end up going Tyler Warren. They desperately need pass catchers. Warren is that. He can play in line. He can be, honestly, the focal point of an offense, and that's what you'd be taking him for here at number 7. I know it's, people want to say, oh, how could a tight end go this high when Brock Bowers was like the 12th or 13th pick last year? This is just a very different class. And Warren is one of the best players in this class, no question. He's got true inline potential, and he can obviously be a really, really good receiver. He wins in a different way compared to Brock Bowers. Bowers really is like a hybrid receiver, whereas Warren is just a really good receiving tight end. Bowers is a special type of mover and doesn't quite have the size that Warren does. And Warren can win with that size, but he's still a good athlete, although not to the same level of Brock Bowers, at least in terms of overall explosiveness, I would say. But he can high point the ball. He can win in the red zone. He can move the chains. I think he is a very good prospect here for the Jets at 7. Tight end has a high bust rate, especially high in the draft. So I can't say, oh, he's a surefire, can't miss type of player up here, but I think it's a good selection, a worthwhile pick here for the Jets. At number 8, Carolina Panthers. Mason Graham, very much in play. Very much in play. Walter Nolan may be in that conversation as well. But I keep going back to this, and I think it'd be hard to not take Mason Graham here if you were the Panthers, and I recognize that could absolutely be the pick. I'm going Jalen Walker. I think they might value something off the edge a little bit more. I look at what they did in free agency. You already have Derek Brown. You bring in Tershawn Wharton. I just don't know that they absolutely need to improve the interior defensive line again with this pick when they're desperately missing something off the edge. And I think Jalen Walker is a step in the right direction towards improving that. as I've talked about the entire process. He's supposedly a very high character, alpha type guy, work ethic off the charts, team leader off the charts. He is a really, really good athlete that is still developing as an edge rusher, but is still a really, really solid prospect, especially in this draft class. Walker goes here. North Carolina kid returning home to play for the Panthers. I just feel like it's a really, really good fit there for Carolina. But Mason Graham and even Walter Nolan, I think, would be tough to avoid here if you're Carolina. They've got, the board falling them or for them in a pretty decent way here as we get to the Saints at 9. And again, it's for all these teams, it's tough to pass on Mason Graham, but I'm going to have them doing it again. I've got the Saints going with Texas offensive lineman Hookem, Kelvin Banks Jr. He's a really solid prospect. He is, maybe the best true left tackle here. You can make an argument for a healthy Josh Simmons, of course, but in terms of character, size, athleticism, health, Kelvin Banks Jr. does check off a lot of boxes, which has kind of led a lot of people, including myself, to push him back towards the top of this first round. And for the Saints, with Ryan Ramczyk retiring, not picking up the fifth-year option on Trevor Penning, Kellen Moore making the first pick of his new regime as head coach, I feel like you can't really go wrong bringing in a really talented offensive lineman here to try and protect your future QB. I think the Saints kind of recognize that they're going to be bad, and they're going to miss Derek Carr for an entire year, it seems. And is Spencer Rattler really going to be that guy? Well, it'd be good to protect him, but this also just might be a pick building towards your future. And that might be expecting the Saints to be picking very high next year in 2026. So just grab Kelvin Banks Jr. here, try to prepare. And I'll tell you what, Kelvin Banks Jr. has some experience with Arch Manning. Not a tremendous amount, but some. Could the Saints take Archie Manning's grandson, Arch, next year? I don't think Arch Manning is going to come out. There's a possibility, I suppose, but I don't think so from what I'm hearing within the program at this moment. We'll see if that changes, obviously. If he's got a great year, he's projected to go number 1 overall, it could happen, but we haven't seen enough from him to say this is a number 1 overall pick, in my opinion, even as a diehard Longhorn fan. At number 10, getting Teteroa McMillan off the board. I think Liam Cohen coming over from Tampa recognizes what a talented receiving core can do. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. You have Brian Thomas Jr. already. That's fantastic. But getting another big-bodied wide receiver into the mix after a trade down, you may have considered him at number 5 anyway. You move down, get a couple extra picks for your new regime, James Gladstone, new GM, younger guy as well. I think might see the value of a trade down in this spot. And you still get the player you may have taken anyway at number 5. Big-bodied receiver, another weapon for Trevor Lawrence. And I think a good addition there in Jacksonville. At number 11, the slide of Mason Graham is officially over. The Michigan man heads to the Bay. Mason Graham to the Niners. And it's a good pick because they just stayed where they were. They let him fall into their laps. This is a player that could be gone at 5 or 6, 7, maybe even 8. And they get him at 11. I think that's pretty good value. He's definitely in the tier 2 of prospects for me in this draft after the 3 blue chip guys. He's a really good prospect. And the Niners have holes all over the place. Sticking and picking, going best player available, not a bad idea if you are the San Francisco 49ers here. Dallas Cowboys at 12. I'm going to continue to go with what I've been going with, and that is Matthew Golden at number 12. Texas receiver, Hookem, would hate to see him with the Cowboys here, but he is a tremendous talent, in my opinion. Does that mean he's a future wide receiver 1 type? No, but he's a good athlete who is a really good route runner, who doesn't really drop the football. He does all the little things well. I think you can look at production and say, okay, it's been disappointing, but if you actually look at his history and the way Texas was using him and then his run down the stretch, I think you see what type of player this guy is. And Golden, I think, can be a really solid complementary piece to an offense. And I think you can mix and match him in the slot with CeeDee Lamb. Golden is a kind of prototypical Z, but has a lot of experience playing on the outside and playing it well. If you want to line him up as the X, I don't think that's impossible that he would be able to win there. But he's really more of a Z, and I think can play the slot, of course, as well. But, CeeDee Lamb has also operated a lot in the slot. Could the Cowboys consider an offensive lineman here? Could this be a shock Tyler Booker at 12? I think that's not actually impossible. The Cowboys have surprised before, even with players named Tyler. You look, out of Tulsa a couple of years ago, they got one of the better guards in the league in Tyler Smith. You have and Tyler Guyton was also a pick last year, right? You have one of the best guards of all time, Zach Martin, retire, and you could look to potentially replace that. And I think the Dolphins might be thinking similarly as well. I just don't think Booker is as good of a fit for Mike McDaniel's scheme. I just don't. So, I was thinking, a lot about this pick because the betting favorite right now is that the Dolphins would draft an offensive lineman, right? But I think with Campbell, Membu, Banks all off the board, who are they taking at 13? It's the betting favorite. It's not the end-all, be-all. But are they going Josh Simmons with the injury concerns? He's not even in the final mock for Daniel Jeremiah in the first round. So there are definitely some question marks with him. Gray Zabel is a guard. I don't think the Dolphins historically have valued guard very much. Does Chris Greer kind of change his tune here and go with one at 13? I don't know. Donovan Jackson may be in that conversation, although it seems a bit early. Josh Connerly Jr. may be in that conversation, although it seems a bit early. Teron Armstead retires. I get offensive line is a need, but I see Walter Nolan available here. I also think Jahdae Barron makes a lot of sense here. Will Johnson makes a lot of sense. Could be an edge, but I see Walter Nolan available. I look at the depth chart for the Dolphins, and the interior D-line is barren. I think they miss a guy like Christian Wilkins, and Walter Nolan might just be best player available here with a ton of potential. He's got some of the highest upside of any player in this draft. He does have some character stuff where, you've heard about immaturity, right? And he's moved all around. I think he went to 4 or 5 different high schools during his high school career, and then transferred from A&M to Ole Miss. And I just heard of some immaturity and character concerns popping up for Walter Nolan, and he was not in the first round for Daniel Jeremiah in his final mock draft. But I think the potential is undeniable. Maybe you worry about the landing spot in Miami, and again, this could end up being a trade down. I think Malachi Starks or Nick Eamon-Wari can end up being a great pick. Jahdae Barron. I mean, the Dolphins have a lot of options here. We'll see which direction they ultimately end up going. And the Broncos trading up feels like a possibility because if Colston Loveland's on the board and you really view him highly and he could be a top 10 player in this class, the Colts are taking him at 14 if he's there, in my opinion. So you could see a team like maybe Seattle or, maybe even Cincinnati, although they'll be surprising, but Denver, LA, one of these teams could consider moving up for Loveland, and 13 seems like a spot to do it because there's a lot still on the board here for Miami. I could absolutely see them trading down and then ending up with Malachi Starks or Jahdae Barron or Will Johnson or a different offensive lineman that we talked about. But I'm going Walter Nolan. I don't feel amazing about it, but just looking at their team and looking at the board, I feel like it makes sense. At number 14, Indianapolis Colts, I'm going with tight end from Michigan, Colston Loveland. He's now Coltson Loveland. I think he's a really good player. Production was not there in 2024. He didn't have a quarterback. Alex Orji, Davis Warren, not able to get him the football. If you watched him play, he can still get open. He was open all the time. He was consistently missed, whether that be with the quarterback not seeing him or with them not being able to get the football within a catchable distance for him. His catch radius is big. It's not, go gadget arms, Mr. Fantastic catch radius. So got to put it on him a little bit better. Do you worry about the Indianapolis Colts current quarterback doing that? Maybe so, but Tight end is a big need. Loveland is a really good player. Again, you can make a really solid argument that he's a top 10 player in this class. Colts get him here at 14. They look to finish off that offense, and it really is starting to look great. Because the offensive line's not terrible. You could consider a guard, maybe something down the board. But you look at Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, Colston Loveland now. That's a really, really good group of receivers. You can lean on the run game with Jonathan Taylor. Hopefully, Anthony Richardson's able to take a step. And then this offense is cooking. At number 15, have the Atlanta Falcons. It's a player that I think is going to end up going earlier. I didn't talk about it, but a team like the Saints, maybe even the Panthers at 8, Niners at 11, even Dolphins at 13, maybe Colts at 14. I think all of these teams could highly consider this player. It's Mykel Williams from Georgia. He stays in state. The Falcons do what we are not really expecting them to do, which is going away from their historic trends under Terry Fontenot, and that is taking a Georgia player in state and including or upgrading their pass rush, which they haven't really done. Mykel Williams checks off a lot of boxes here. He's got NFL traits. He's got great size, super long arms. These are important in the trenches. I know a lot of people are tired of the arm length conversation, but the reason why we talk about it is because historically, guys with shorter arms do drop in the draft. Guys with the longer arms go up higher in the draft. Trayvon Walker went number 1 overall. Tyree Wilson, was a top 10 pick, I think number 7 overall to the Raiders or something in that neighborhood, right? Like, these guys go higher up the board because if you can project and develop them, you're getting one of the better players. You have these uncoachable traits. Why does arm length matter so much? In the trenches, if you can get hands on your opponent first, you can control the engagement. If you're a corner, same deal playing a press against a receiver. It does matter. It really, really does. I wish we could say it doesn't. Obviously, you have to be a good player, and production at the college level is cool, but we don't really care so much about college production. It's about how do you win, and will that translate? You need to be able to show on tape that you can win in ways that will translate to the NFL. Everyone at the NFL has prototypical size, pretty much. Everyone is a really good athlete. You can't win purely based on athleticism or beating smaller opponents that are not NFL players. We need to factor that in. Williams, I think, could go much higher because he does check off all the size boxes. He played hurt through 2024, another supposed high character guy that I think has his best football ahead of him. There is some development required, but and there are some injury concerns, but if you can get a healthy Mykel Williams and develop him, you're getting a really good player, and the Falcons finally upgrade their pass rush. At number 16, have the Arizona Cardinals. I think it's going to be offensive line. It's just a matter of which do they take. I think if you have a clean bill of health on Josh Simmons, it will be tough not to draft him here. He's one of the better offensive linemen in the entire draft. Torn patellar tendon. It's worse than an ACL tear. You are concerned about how he bounces back and plays with that long term. It's a concern. Guard may be a little bit more of a need at this point. But Simmons, I think, to pair him up with Paris Johnson Jr., get a couple of Ohio State bookends, that's not a bad combo. But Bray Zabel will end up being my pick here. Instant starter at guard with potential to start at center long term if you wanted to do that. It would be one of the highest picks we've ever seen for a center, but in this scenario, he'd be playing guard. And he's a very, very good guard prospect. This is someone that really dominated the Senior Bowl, has crushed the offseason as a whole. He's athletic enough, the tape is good enough, and he can play tackle if you really need him to, if there's an injury. But again, it would kind of be like Joe Tooney, who slid over from left guard, where he's an all-pro, to left tackle and really did not hold up down the stretch of the playoffs. So you'd like to keep him on the interior again. Way shorter arms. We're not tired of hearing that just yet, right? Cincinnati Bengals at 17. I really considered Mike Green a lot here. Malachi Starks, I think, is in play as well. Nick Eamon-Worry in play as well. Also, potentially a guard, but Zabel's off the board now. I think that might have been who they would have targeted. So it's going to be something on the defense side of the ball. And I basically, I think about how the Bengals like to use their defensive ends. And I just don't think Mike Green is an amazing fit just based on his size. It's just not traditionally what they've gone for, and they might decide to change that up. But he's, to me, more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. But he's good enough against the run to where it's not unimaginable they'd play in a 4-3. I just want to say that. But I think Shamar Stewart is just more of their type. He's a really, really good athlete that I think could go higher than this tonight. Shamar Stewart is not 6'6", 290 of what he was listed at, but he's more like 6'6", 267 at the combine, I want to say, 270. And that is just more of the type of defensive end they typically go for. But this is not Myles Murphy. This is a really, really exceptional athlete. In terms of true athleticism, I look to Relative Athletic Score, RAS. It's a metric developed by Kent Lee Platt at MathBomb on Twitter. It factors in explosiveness, height and weight, agility, strength, everything, and says how athletic they are compared to every draft prospect at their position since 1987. Shamar Stewart is number one among defensive ends. Number one. He is an unbelievable athlete. He's still developing as a pass rusher. He's great against the run, can set a great edge, but you look at the way Texas A&M deployed their edge rushers. Shamar Stewart was very often either setting the edge, containing zone read. He wasn't really just in a ton of one-on-one scenarios to get after the quarterback. It wasn't what he was asked to do. At the Senior Bowl, you saw what this guy could do as a pass rusher. He can really get off the edge in a hurry. He just moves differently. To me, he's a top 10 player in this class. There is some projection you have to do to get there. You have to say, okay, this guy's going to continue to improve, but I think he can. The athleticism is off the charts. I would take a chance on Shamar Stewart. He's got different problems to Myles Murphy, I'll say that. At number 18, Seattle Seahawks. Mike Green, I think, is in play. I really do. Will Johnson, I think, could be in play just because he's such a great player falling to this position. The tight ends are off the board, so could this be a receiver? Could this be like an Emeka Ibuka, right? Could this be Luther Burden? Well, to me, with the Seattle Seahawks, I look at what they need. I look at their historic draft trends. I know they need offensive line, specifically interior offensive line. Historically, they have not gone for it in round one. I think John Schneider will continue that trend and end up selecting one of my favorite players in the entire draft. That's Alabama linebacker Jahad Campbell. I really couldn't find reasons to not draft him here. I think he's a good fit for the system. I look at him teaming up with Mike McDonald. I think he's going to be a weapon for this Seattle defense. He can get off the edge and win as a pass rusher. He can win up the middle as a pass rusher, as an off-ball blitzer. He can drop back into coverage and be a weapon there. He's very good in coverage. He's a real great chase player. His actual diagnosing ability is not phenomenal, so I don't really expect him to play Mike at the next level. We'll see if that can develop, though he's still, a young player who's still learning to play off-ball linebacker, right? He was a 5-star edge recruit to Alabama. But I look at his versatility. I look at his overall ability within this class. He's a top 10 player for me. I love Jahad Campbell. I think I had more reasons to draft him than not draft him here to Seattle. I just couldn't think of a better player for them at this spot. I know Nick Emanwari's got a really good chance. Maybe one of the offensive linemen, maybe Mike Green. But to me, Jahad Campbell made the most sense here given how this board has kind of fallen and ended up being the selection. Number 19, I could give you the analysis of, okay, 3-4 outside linebacker, really good fit, has production. We know the Bucs love production overall. Ezeraku is a ton off the edge. But also the vibes. I know that's, away from how I typically do it, but The vibes for Donovan Ezaraku, he just feels like a buck. But maybe that's because he checks off all of these boxes, right? He's got really long arms. He's got incredible production. He's really agile and quick, even if he lacks, top tier explosiveness. He's shorter, but I don't mind that in the trenches when it's a leverage game, when his arms are longer than 34 inches. He can get his hands on you first. He can win, and he's got a number of different ways to win as a pass rusher. He's a really exciting player, and I think just another guy that checks off a lot of boxes, which leads me to believe he's going to end up going fairly high in this draft. I've got him top 20 here, and Tampa improved their pass rush at number 19. At number 20, it's very chalky, but it just feels like it's going to be the pick. Could be a receiver maybe. I'm going to get the running back, Amarion Hampton from North Carolina, off the board. They lose one, and they replace him with another. Javonte Williams at UNC headed to Dallas, and now Amarion Hampton from North Carolina headed to Denver to replace him. Really good player. He's got fantastic size, and he's got really good overall athleticism. I think he can do a number of different things for an offense. We know what Sean Payton likes to do. It's utilize tight ends, running backs. It's not necessarily always these outside receivers, but Hampton can be a threat in this offense, a true bell cow, RB1 type of guy. And Denver sticks and picks. We know Sean Payton can sometimes get aggressive, but to me, I'm almost expecting more of a trade down, if they're going to trade at all, or a stick and pick, and Hampton kind of just falls into their lap. At 21, I'm going Shedeur Sanders. He fell right into their laps. We know the Steelers have taken a quarterback in this range before, and in this class, I think Shedeur Sanders is worth taking at 21. He is the most accurate quarterback in this class, and I feel like people are not valuing that highly enough. He is the most accurate passer of any QB in this class. The most. The offensive line didn't do him a lot of favors at Colorado, but when you needed someone to make a play, Shedeur Sanders could make plays in the clutch. I can't say that about guys like Jackson Dart that are expected to potentially go in this range as well, and I might be rooting for him on the Giants here soon. That's a scary thought, but Sanders, I think, is worth the selection here. He can be one of the better half of QBs in the league. I think you can win with Shedeur Sanders, especially if George Pickens sticks around in Pittsburgh. You have DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson maybe getting more playing time. Obviously, some threats at tight end with Freiermuth and, Darnell potentially developing as a player. So, to me, I think Sanders makes sense. You don't have to trade up for him. You maybe didn't think he was going to be available this time, even last week. But he falls to 21. Steelers stop the slide. Yeah, this could absolutely be, Will Johnson or Nick Emanwari or Malachi Starks or Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon. I could see any of those. I really, really could. But I think Sanders makes the most sense here. It's the most valuable position in football. You need a quarterback. GM Omar Khan says they're going to go into camp with 4. They've got 2 right now. They're going to draft a QB. The question is whether it's a Shedeur Sanders, maybe at 21, or is it a Jalen Milroe at, a little bit further down the board. I don't know. It's tough to say. Will he even be available? Maybe they take him at 21. That would be something. That really would be. At 22, I haven't really done something like this the entire cycle, I feel like. The entire time I've had the Chargers going with a pass catcher, right? And if it's not a pass catcher, it's Kenneth Grant. Or sometimes it's been Mike Green, to be fair. I don't know that there's a receiver worth taking. Maybe Emeka Ibuka, right? I think Burden is really good. It doesn't seem like he's going to end up being a first-round pick because of the character immaturity stuff that was reported with him. But I just look at the talent available, and it's tough for me to say that Will Johnson is not one of the best players available here. I look at the cornerback group for the Chargers. It's not terrible. It's not great. And I think if there's any team here that would feel good about Will Johnson, I feel like it would be the Chargers, right? You've got one of the best connections here to any Michigan player with Jim Harbaugh. So it feels like it's going to end up being a Michigan player with Colston Loveland long gone, Mason Graham long gone. It feels easy to say it's going to be a Michigan guy here. Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant. It feels like it's going to be one of those two guys. And I just think Will Johnson's the best player here for them. I know corner is not the absolute biggest need for the Chargers. I totally get that. But if you look at the way the Chargers play defense, it's zone heavy. That's where Will Johnson can thrive. Michigan connection. Maybe just BPA. I might be way off here. Again, like DJ doesn't even have Will Johnson as a first-round pick in his last mock, which leads me to believe that teams are afraid of the injury. They're afraid of the athleticism. Maybe they don't take a chance on him in the first round. But I think he's too good not to go in round one. The Chargers just feels like a good landing spot for him, where I didn't really expect to ever give them a corner, but I just think the talent and the connection was too much to pass up on, and Will Johnson's off the board, and I think the Packers maybe don't love that. I think Will Johnson to the Packers would have been an easy selection. I am going to give them a corner, though. It's just such an overwhelming need, and that's kind of the same thing with Miami about why corner makes a lot of sense. With Jalen Ramsey being traded, they already need corner in the first place. The Packers, it's same type of deal. They already needed corner. Jair Alexander seems like he's not going to be a Packer next year, right? So it feels like it's got to be a corner. Jahdae Barron, I don't think is a great fit for the defense. They brought in Nate Hobbs. I don't know that they really need a nickel. They're a man-heavy team. That's not really Jahdae Barron's game if he's going to be a boundary, right? So you look at Trey Amos, but I'm going to go Maxwell Hairston here out of Kentucky. And there is some character stuff with him. You can look into that. I don't know how reputable, but there is some potential character stuff. There's some injury stuff. But Hairston's really good. He's got good size. Outside of the injury stuff, he's been really good when he's been on the field. Tremendous player in man coverage and a tremendous athlete. Ran in the 4.2s and the speed really shows up on tape. He can fly, but he's also really good in coverage. The injury stuff kind of impacted his tackling ability over the past year. But to me, get a healthy version of him. He can be a starting boundary corner in the NFL, and the Packers need that. At 24, I've got the Minnesota Vikings moving down. They've got 4 picks in this draft. They need more. And I think a team that could be motivated to move up is the Kansas City Chiefs. They've got 31. They have Tennessee 66. They could be willing to move one of these picks to slide up to 24. And again, you probably end up seeing some type of pick swap. Maybe Minnesota trades, Philly's 6th rounder in 2026, and in return they get back a 5th or 226 from Carolina. I don't know. The compensation to me is not as important. It's just about the fact that I think the Chiefs would be motivated to move up here. Jump the Texans, jump the Rams, jump the Ravens, jump the Lions. All teams that could consider offensive line in some way, shape, or form. Tackle or guard for the Texans, tackle for the Rams, tackle or guard, but probably guard for the Ravens. I think Stanley is back in Baltimore long term. Guard for the Lions, potentially guard for the Commanders as well. But with these 2 tackles still being on the board and Donovan Jackson, I think the Chiefs make their move and they jump up some of these teams. They've got ammunition. For sure they do in this draft. We just traded a couple of picks and still they've got ammunition. This is a team that wants to win a Super Bowl, obviously, and they all do, but this is a team that could legitimately do it. We see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl every year. Josh Simmons on the board. Josh Connerly on the board. I think one of the Joshes is headed to Kansas City here. Simmons' injury stuff clouds his projection. Is this guy going to be a first-round pick? Talent says absolutely. Injury says maybe not. Josh Connerly does not have the same level of ability compared to Josh Simmons, in my opinion. I think Simmons is a much better prospect purely based on what he put on film for a couple of months before going down with a major injury. So Connerly could go as high as 9 to the Saints probably, but he's also still on the board at 24. That being said, I'm going Josh Simmons. I just think he's better. The Chiefs go out, they sign a tackle in free agency, not a great one from San Francisco, no disrespect, but Simmons is maybe not forced to play right away. You can get him healthy. I think given his size and movement abilities, there's a chance he can also move inside to guard. And I think this could be a guy that is starting down the stretch for a Chiefs team in the playoffs. I think that's a possibility. Will it be a tackle or guard? I don't know, but I think he's got the ability to do both. But he's probably a long-term left tackle in the NFL. And that's what the Chiefs, in my opinion, need long-term. Simmons at 24 after a trade up. Texans at 25. It feels like an easy pick for me here. And I could see Connerly. I could absolutely see one of the guards, like Tyler Booker or Donovan Jackson, who's now listed at tackle, interestingly enough. But he can do it. We've seen that he can do it. Had a great run for Ohio State down the stretch. But I'm going to go Emeka Egbuka. Get to team him back up with CJ Stroud. You know Stroud's going to be campaigning for his guy. Team me back up with Emeka Egbuka. He's headed to Houston in this scenario. Receiver's a big need for Houston. They've had some departures like Stephon Diggs. They've had some big injuries like Tank Dell. And you hate to see that stuff, especially in the case of Tank Dell, obviously. But I don't know that you can really think about him playing football again. Like, he's got a long way to go before that's a possibility. He had some insane injuries with that knee. Look into it. It's pretty bad. Receiver is an overwhelming need, but someone that can play the slot is a really good combination, in my opinion, with Nico Collins. So this was just an easy pick to make. I could absolutely see this being something on the O-line, like Donovan Jackson, Tyler Booker. Booker makes a lot of sense at 25, but I'm going Egbuka. At 26, have the LA Rams going with Longhorn legend Jahdae Barron. Hook 'em. See a number of different things here. I think, honestly, outside shot, Carson Schwarzenegger staying in LA could be a really fun fit for this Rams team at 26. It seems early, but again, in this draft, the difference between 15 and 60 is not very much. So the difference between a player that is ranked, 20 on your board and 50th in the case here with PFF, not that weird to take that guy at 26. So we might see some real surprises at the back end of the first. Really, really could. Barron's a great player, though. You look at where the Rams need to improve. That secondary is in rough shape. Corner especially, but the nickel corner position could really, really be upgraded. I could see Barron going earlier in this draft, like Miami, I think is a really good fit for him at 13. But in the end, what I kind of thought about was that, and I love Barron as a player, I just don't think he's big enough to be a boundary. He's got short arms, he's tiny, and he's not really someone that has played a ton of man on the boundary. He's more of a zone corner, but has been able to thrive in the nickel. And I just don't see the NFL valuing nickel corners. They don't value linebacker. They don't value safety. They especially do not value nickel corners. I don't know why, because they're really impactful and they play a lot. Barron is a stud. He's instinctive. He has a nose for the football. He's always in the right place. He's a ball hawk. He is a playmaker. I want that on my football team. Someone that can make plays. Jahdae Barron can do that. And I think he's a really good fit here for this Rams defense. And I guess you can say that stops the slide. But if Brian Branch went at pick 45, I know he didn't test amazingly. Barron tested so well. But if Barron, is available at this spot, it wouldn't be that shocking to me, even though I think he could go earlier, especially in this class. I love him as a player. I just see the NFL not valuing nickels, and it's tough for me to project a nickel corner to go a lot higher than this. At number 27, I have the Baltimore Ravens. What do the Ravens do? They trade down or they wait for a stud to fall into their lap, and it's happened. Malachi Starks, Nick Emanwari, Mike Green, James Pierce Jr., Josh Connerly, if they wanted to go that direction. They've got so many different options. Derek Harmon's a great player. I love Savone Revel. Don't think he's going to end up being a first-round pick. For the Ravens, they could upgrade free safety. Malachi Starks is here. It is a no-brainer selection for me. Kyle Hamilton back at strong safety, Starks at free safety, Marlon Humphrey in the nickel. You've got some better boundaries. Could still address that. Even with this pick, it would not be super surprising to see the Ravens go corner again here. But Starks is a baller. He is a stud. He's a super high character, high work ethic guy, big team leader. He might go a lot earlier than 27. But again, I see the NFL not valuing this position. If something's going to slide, I think it's going to be one of these positions. I hate to not think about the player, but we just don't see these positions get drafted all that highly. And when Starks is coming off of a down 2024, a slide to 27 doesn't seem impossible, but the Ravens stopped that slide. 28, Detroit Lions. I am going with Tyler Booker. Now, I might end up missing here because, and they've done apparently a lot of homework on the guard class. Donovan Jackson, I could very, very easily see, but I'm going to go Tyler Booker, power run oriented guy. I think he would work best in a gap scheme. Goes here to Detroit. Obviously, new offensive coordinator coming in from Denver. But Booker is supposedly, reportedly, the Will Anderson of the offense for Alabama. And that's the team leader, alpha, dog, big team guy. So I think that's just a culture fit in Detroit. And guard could be a need for them long term. Apparently, they've looked into it a lot. I know it would be tough to pass on Mike Green. I recognize that. But I worry about some of the off-the-field stuff with him, and I think that does make his projection a little bit cloudy in terms of where he ends up going. Because I could see him off the board at 9, maybe even 8, right? But there's also a world where he's not a first-round pick. But not this world. He's going at number 29 to the Commanders for me. He is super athletic. I think he more than holds his own against the run. But above all, he's a really good pass rusher. And there are a number of guys like that in this class. James Pierce Jr., really good pass rusher. Where does he end up going? Green to me is just a stud player. I think fits well enough into this Commanders defense. They need something off the edge. And I think Green ends up just being too tough to pass up here. At number 30, Buffalo Bills. I am going with Derek Harmon from Oregon. I think he's one of the better interior defensive linemen in this class. He can really get after the QB. As I continue to say, he led all FBS interior defensive linemen in pressures this past season. He was an incredible force, disruptive in the backfield. Harmon is a really good player, and I think you could see the Bills look to upgrade something on defense here. Edge, interior defensive line, cornerback, safety. I didn't really see a corner that I thought they would target here. Like, Amos does make sense for sure, and I could see Trey Amos being a Bill. I could see Nick Eamon being a Bill here. And then, maybe James Pierce Jr. off the edge could be fun. But Harmon ends up being my selection at 30. At 31, after the trade down, Kansas City Chiefs trade to Minnesota. The Vikings are on the clock, and I am going with super athlete Nick Eamon to join the Minnesota secondary. He's a tremendous athlete, of course, as we know. One of the most athletic players we've ever seen in terms of height, weight, speed, explosiveness, strength. Eamon is the number one safety ever. And if you change him to different positions, he's still at the very top of the list. For linebacker, for corner, this guy is athletic as they get. He is unbelievable, but he's also a ball hawk. He can, I said hawk weird, but he can find the football. He can run with anybody. He's at his best probably in the slot or in the box. But I also think he can play too high strong safety. If he can be the boundary safety, and it's not that weird, but he's got enough speed to play field safety. So the instincts are developing as a too high defender, which is why maybe you want to deploy all that athleticism near the box. I get that, or in the box, but Minnesota upgrades their secondary here, and Eamon is just a really, really good player. At number 32, last pick of my final 2025 mock draft of the year. Are you guys ready for the 2026 one? That's going to be fun. I'm going Kenneth Grant. They lose Milton Williams. Philly is all about the defensive and offensive lines. They grab one of the most athletic interior defensive linemen in this class. He's got big-time upside. He's got upside as a pass rusher. He's a big-time space eater. And deploying a three-man front and getting a rotation of Kenneth Grant, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter feels like a nightmare for opposing offensive lines, because I recognize their defense, right? You're not going to be playing Grant, Carter, and Jordan Davis at the same time all the time. Totally not going to do that. But if Jordan Davis is going to play like 20 to 25 snaps a game, you need a guy like Kenneth Grant that can come in and be effective. And Jalen Carter's going to get, even more snaps than the both of them. But a Grant and Davis rotation is nasty. And I just think that Philly will do something on the D-line here. I could see a tackle like Connerly makes sense. He falls out of the first round for me today. And I could see, maybe even an upgrade to the secondary, depending on who's there. Like Amos does make some sense as well. I could see a tight end like maybe Mason Taylor sneaks in at 32 here. But this is my final predictive mock for the 2025 NFL season, or NFL draft. People don't, I think, respect how tough it is to get exact picks. But for player to team fit, I feel pretty good about the first 4, decent about the first 5. If I can get like 8 or 9, I'll be happy. Anything more than that would be an overwhelming success. I submitted this to the mock draft grading, kind of like aficionado, I would say, the Huddle Report. And they grade all of the most reputable mock drafts for the past, I think, 25 years. So I'm in that now. Had to submit this last night. This is what I felt good about last night, and I still feel decent about it today. Could change some things, but this is what I'm sticking with. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you're ready for the draft. I'll see you tonight on this channel, or Twitch if you prefer that, twitch.tv/Bengal. And I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.